Повертаємося у прямий ефір. ТРК «Перший Західний», Ірина Капітан,
ТРК «Перший Західний»,
те, що відбувається на
and
фронті в
we
Україні,
will be telling you what is
та
happening
як реагує світ,
in the front
і наші
line in
партнери,
Ukraine,
і не
in the
дуже
regions,
НАТО, і в
and
Україні.
how the
Почнемо
world and
з
our partners
банера,
and
який
other
світілайт,
institutions
який
are
стоїть
responding,
зараз на вулиці
and we will
Дорошенка у
start with
Львові.
a city light
Отак
that
от,
we have on Doroshenka
рекомендація
Street
для
in
росіян,
the city of
треба
Lviv.
показати
So
тризуб,
it's a
тоді можна
recommendation for the
здаватися. Це
Russians. You
найкращий
need to
шанс
show
для
a
них
trident, and then
залишатися
you can
живими.
surrender.
Також
This
я
is
не
the
знаю, що
best
сьогодні відбувається
way
на
to
Миколаївщині. Видно, всі в
ensure
хорошому
that you will
настрої.
stay
Проснувся,
alive.
хто не знає, хто такий Кім, це керівник військової адміністрації
Mr.
Миколаївщини.
Kim,
Всі свої
the
звернення
head
починає
of the
«Доброго
Mykolaiv
ранку, я
regional
з України, або «Доброго
military
обіду, ми з України,
administration
доброго
woke up
обіду,
in high
доброго
spirits this
обіду, ми з
morning.
України».
He
Так,
starts
сьогодні
each
Миколаївщині
morning by
піхотинці
saying,
збили
"Good morning, I'm
4
from Ukraine."
вертольоти.
Our
Окупантів, причому
infantry
3
officers
з них
shot
збив
down
один і той самий
4
морський піхотинець,
Russian
так що,
aircraft,
кожен
and
заробив собі
3
звання Героя
were
України.
shot
Це
down by
безсумнівно,
the
офіційно,
same
але
infantry
всі наші
officers. So
захисники,
he
немає значення
has
ЗСУ,
definitely
Нацгвардії,
earned
СБУ,
the
чи
title of
прикордонній
the
службі, всі вони
hero of
герої
Ukraine,
України. Після
but
того,
it doesn't really matter whether
як
you
були
serve
збиті
in the
4
armed forces
літаки,
of
напевно,
Ukraine
хлопці
or
з
the
повітряних
National
сил трошки
Guard,
вразили,
you
що
are
відстають,
our
тому
heroes.
збили ще й Су-25,
And they also shot down
пілота
Su-25.
взяли у
The
полон,
pilot
як
was
бачимо на сьогоднішньому
captured,
дню. Все більше пілотів
and as we
потрапляють у
can
полон.
see
Це
today,
означає,
more
що
and
росіяни
more
не
pilots
контролюють території,
are
немає можливості відправляти
taken
рятувальні
into
групи, тому що
captivity.
кожного разу,
It
коли збивають
means
літак,
that the Russians are not
польот,
really
пілоти
interested in
контролюються,
saving their
відправляють
people,
рятувальну
because
групу. Вчора,
every
до речі,
time
біля Волновахи
a
також
plane
рятувальна
is
група,
shot
яка
down,
прилетіла на
pilots
польоті,
catapult,
знищили разом
and then
вертольотом.
rescue teams are sent out, but this is something that the Russians are not doing. I would like to continue the topic of helicopters. The Russian pilot detained in the vicinity of Chernihiv is one of the most seasoned Russian pilots, and he was engaged in the bombardment of Syria. We can see some photographs of this pilot. You should be able to see everything on the screen. So in the video, there's a shot down Russian pilot, and there are some photographs that demonstrate that he was tied to Syria. This is something that we received from the security service of Ukraine, and he's going to have many interesting conversations with our security service. He will be brought to justice for multiple atrocities, as well as multiple other Russian invaders that came here with war and aggression. And by the way, he is a unique pilot because he was honored to meet Bashar Assad himself. And when we were off air, we agreed that the best punishment would be to send him to Syria. We did some math yesterday and calculated the value of all the aircraft and helicopters shot down. And this is something that Forbes Ukraine did as well. And as per their calculations, since the outbreak of the war, the Ukrainian army destroyed over 1,900 units of military equipment, but we also need to add the numbers from today, 34 planes articulated by Russia, and my calculations were higher. So this is an approximate value of military equipment. For example, price per tank, 4 million USDs, because this is the price that Russia used to supply tanks to Algeria. And as for Su-25, 11 million. So this is the price taken into account by Forbes, but their value, in fact, is 25 million. Su-30, 33 million. Su-34, 36 million. But yesterday we received some other information from the Russian media. We have to read them as well. So their price is about 40 to 60 million. So 3 billion USD. This is the minimum value of the military equipment decimated in Ukraine. But of course, we cannot freely calculate all the vehicles and military equipment destroyed, because if there is an explosion, sometimes there's nothing left. I mean, you might have just the caterpillar or some other small pieces. So some of the tanks are destroyed completely. They are totaled, and so you cannot really even differentiate them. Not only are they incurring losses because we are destroying their equipment, but they are also incurring losses because of their oligarchs and some of Putin's stooges. I am shocked by the salaries of the Russian propaganda machine. The special forces seized 2 villas of Mr. Solovyov. We have already mentioned him several times, and Mr. Solovyov and Ms. Skabeeva should be the first one to stand in court. Skabeeva has 2 villas, and these villas were seized. The total value is 8 million euros. A special operation was carried out because basically they want to seize all the assets associated with the Russian aggression. Alexei Mordashov and Gennady Timchenko became victims as well. Their yachts were seized and some other assets were seized as well. Mr. Solovyov filed a complaint against the Italian police. He said, well, you know what, I went to the police, I have all the agreements and contracts in place, why are you taking away my villa? I purchased everything legally, I paid hefty taxes, so I did everything as per legislation, and then someone made this decision that I was a bad guy and that had a bad impact on my real estate. Well, you need to remember who you work for, because basically we are talking about 8 million, and they thought that Italians were their friends because Mr. Berlusconi was Putin's friend, but the world is changing. We have good news from Volnovakha. As of 1450, about 400 residents from Volnovakha and the adjacent villages were evacuated. So this is something that was informed by the head of the military administration. Earlier, about 300 people were evacuated, and as of last night, about 3,000 residents from Volnovakha and adjacent villages had to be evacuated. So we still have about 2,600 people as hostages. The problem is that the Russians continue shelling and bombarding all the green corridors. Well, it's good that my wife is not watching us, because my wife is in perpetual communication with the Germans. She's engaged in some other projects, and the Germans were really happy about this green humanitarian corridor. And she said, well, most likely they will continue shelling. Well, she sounded really rude and harsh. The German said, how come? Is it possible? These are people. But the problem is that they still do not understand that the Russians continue shelling the civilians, and all our forecasts came to fruition. So they continue bombarding peaceful citizens. A journalist from Sky News received an injury. A group of them were subjected to an airstrike. They came to Kyiv to cover the events happening in Ukraine. This incident occurred at the beginning of the week. So the journalists were on the way back from another hotspot, and they found themselves under shelling, and the journalist received an injury in the leg, and the operator was injured as well. They sought shelter in the nearest building and waited for the police to come. Of course, the journalists were informed that they were shelled by the Russians, and this injured British journalist was transported to Great Britain. And remember the Italian journalists that were killed near Slavyansk and Kramatorsk in 2014. The Russians tried to falsify this case, but in the end, everyone understood who was to blame. And we have another trophy from the sky. It's a very generous day today. The military service members of the Pivnic North Operational Command shot down a unmanned aerial vehicle, and they also found a pilot of Su-25 that was shot down near Vyhovtsi. That pilot died, which is not a surprise. And since the height is not too big, pilots do not always have enough time to open the parachute. The National Bank of Ukraine has already garnered about 10 billion hryvnias. This is the money on their special account, and this is the money coming from Ukrainians and foreigners. Among the foreigners, we have the US, Great Britain, Poland, Finland, the Czech Republic, China, Canada, and multiple other countries. So the National Bank reports that 5.7 billion hryvnias were transferred for the needs of the National Guard, the police, the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, and they still have 4.3 billion left on their account, and this is the money that they will use for other purposes. I mean, even if they do not use that money for the army right now, we will definitely need that money to restore our country. The Parliament of Ukraine continues working, and they drafted a law on tightening the punishment for war crimes, and I'm sure that this draft law will have no problem being adopted by the parliament. In Bucha, 2 children were injured, so they have some severe wounds, and because of the continuous shelling, the ambulance was not able to pick up these injured children. As soon as we have some updates, we will definitely let you know. Some other pieces of the information from today's Putin speech, because he addressed his people in inverted commas. When we are off air, we often share some of the interesting and funny stories that happened to us. Well, maybe you saw this video with Jean Belenyuk approaching the checkpoint, and he recorded this video clip, so he lowered the window, and the police officer saw him and said, "You can continue. I can see that you are not a Moskal." So I think it's one of my favorite video clips right now. It's circulating on the internet right now. And my dad told me when I was little, Irena, if you decide to get married, you can marry whoever, even an African American, but not a Moskal. And this is something that we discussed extensively. We have multiple people enrolling in the International Legion, and we have quite a lot of African Americans or black people. For example, we have people from Nigeria. These people are ready to fight for Ukraine. But the Russian media say that the national troops are here, but well, basically we have an international legion of people who want to contribute to this fight, because everyone understands that Putin is a threat not only to Ukraine but to the entire Europe and world. So if you see some messages about the NATO troops being here, do not believe that. I checked out what the Russians post on TikTok, and the Russians are 100% positive that we have some monsters here, that we are very cruel, and there are multiple funny stories about that. So if you are interested, you can watch this video clip. It's very funny. So the Russians have no clue who they are fighting against, what is happening here. They are shocked by the fact that their military equipment is exploded, and they have no clue how it happens. And there's another piece of information that some of the equipment of those Russian invaders that were ousted from Kherson was already destroyed. So basically, the peaceful residents do their utmost to kick the invaders out, and then the armed forces of Ukraine bend over backwards to destroy their military equipment and vehicles. Another piece of information about the aforementioned negotiations. According to some sources, the third round of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine may take place on the 7th of March. At least this is the information that leaked from the presidential office, and they say that it's a proposal from Ukraine, and right now our negotiators are waiting for the confirmation of the Russian side. Just a reminder, we informed everyone earlier that one of the negotiators who participated in the first round of the negotiations is not with us anymore, because during the interrogation by the security service of Ukraine, it turned out that he had been leaking some information to the Russian invaders, and so the security service did whatever they had to do. Well, I guess now he's reporting to Hitler about the plight of Mr. Putin. In Horodyansk, in the mental hospital, the Russian military officers captured 650 patients. And this is something that we heard from Alexei Kuleba. For several days, they tried to capture women and children to use them as human shields, and most likely they want to do the same right now. So they want to use children as human shields to continue their advance in the direction of Kyiv. I promised earlier that I would share some of the key messages from Putin's speech. He threatened the West again, providing that the West would close the sky over Ukraine. The president of Ukraine and some other governmental officials continue crying out to our Western partners. And Mr. Kozitsky, the head of the Lviv Regional Military Administration, publicized his address as well, and he called upon our partners to enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And this is something that Mr. Putin focused on in his speech. A quote, so we hear that they want to enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. It's not possible. You can do that only from the territory of neighboring countries, but any moves in this direction will be viewed by us as participation in the armed conflict, because we believe that it will be a threat for our military. So basically, he continues threatening the entire world. So that very minute, we will deem them participants of the armed conflict, and we will not really care which organizations they represent. So not only is it a threat to NATO, but basically he's threatening some individual NATO member states. Well, let's see how things pan out. As per the latest information, during the recent extraordinary NATO meeting, the Secretary General, Mr. Stoltenberg, reaffirmed that they would not enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. But one of our experts this morning said that there should be more pressure, not only from our leadership, but from the population, in particular from diaspora. Together with our colleagues, we are recording some messages in cooperation with our counterparts in other countries, because we want them to appeal to their governments, to their presidents and prime ministers. We believe that this is the only way we can strengthen this pressure. We can ratchet up this pressure. And one of the surveys shows that 74% of Americans believe that the sky should be closed over Ukraine. In Kharkiv region, finally some of the villages have their cell phone coverage and communications, and negotiations are ongoing to establish a green corridor. 400 people were evacuated from Volnovakha, and unfortunately no people were evacuated from Mariupol because of continued shelling. And the Ministry of Healthcare of Ukraine states that the Ministry of Health cannot cancel prescriptions because there are certain drugs that can be detrimental to health. And this requirement pertains to those medications that comprise narcotics and some other medications. Narcotics, psychoactive substances, or chemical precursors. So the thrust is that it's important to have at least some sort of control over medications. The Russians brought humanitarian aid to Berdyansk, but the local people took to the streets and refused to accept that humanitarian aid. Turetsk is also under shelling. At about 1 p.m., several streets of Turetsk were shelled. Dozens of buildings and household facilities were destroyed. Well, I think that Putin is definitely inadequate because he keeps repeating his mantra that there are no civilian facilities being destroyed in Ukraine. This is just part and parcel of our propaganda. I have some information from the Ministry of Social Policy of Ukraine. Later today, we will have a conversation with one of the representatives of the Odessa region, and hopefully we will be able to find out more about the current state of play there. But in Odessa region, they had a major evacuation operation on the evacuation of children, and Marina Lazebna from the Ministry of Social Policy informed that the evacuation was successful. 576 vulnerable children and 62 support staff were evacuated. This is the largest number, so 576 children, 62 accompanying persons. So these people, these children include orphans, children without parents, children from some care homes and boarding schools, and the Ministry of Social Policy mentioned that they were really concerned about this evacuation operation because a large number of children, great risks of information leakage, so they were really afraid that the operation would be disrupted. But these children were evacuated at nighttime. They are already in Poland, and they are accommodated in the pre-defined locations. These children will be registered by the relevant consular offices in different countries. And a consular institution has 1 day to inform the National Service about the registration, the consular registration of these children. So thanks God that so many children were successfully transported to Poland. Another reminder, a little bit earlier, some cancer children were also evacuated from the Chernobyl hospital. These children require special care and support, and they cannot continue being here, especially during air raid alerts, because a lot of them have IVs attached to them. And as for the evacuation, the Ukrainian Railways informs that there will be another evacuation train from Kharkiv, and tomorrow at 11 Zaporizhia Helm, and then 9 a.m. there will be another evacuation train to Helm, and from Helm people can proceed to Warsaw, and the Polish railways provide assistance in evacuation. And on the Kyiv-Helm train, there will be also some cars from Lviv. The departure times are already fixed, but there might be some changes. Mykolaiv, 4 shot down helicopters. Vitaly Kim, well, there are even some questions about whether he is married or not, because if he is not married, then maybe he will participate in the Bachelor show. But anyway, the head of the Mykolaiv Regional Military Administration informs that the Ukrainian military captured captured a lot of vehicles, and 4 Russian helicopters were shot down. So that one Ukrainian officer did that. Well, you can see that our Ukrainian military are very greedy. They want to destroy everything themselves. The Russian occupants are wandering around settlement in villages, and he encourages people to feed them but arrest them. As for Kherson, the Russian troops were ousted from the city, so there's no military equipment and vehicles in the city. But unfortunately, the Russian invaders killed some local residents, and there are more losses among the local population. So a big request to the residents, please be very cautious and careful. The risks are always there, and there's always a risk of encountering the Russian invaders. As for Hostomel, I heard some updates from my friends and acquaintances. So there was a request from the armed forces to seek shelter in basements because they had a clearance operation, and we know that about 50 Russian personnel were killed, 20 units of military equipment. So whenever you receive some instructions from the armed forces, do follow them, because we don't really want our enemy to use civilians as human shields. Did you hear from one of our oligarchs? Well, I'm sitting here looking at this piece of news and I have no clue what to say. The Ukrainska Pravda media outlet sent a letter to Mr. Akhmetov, and he replied, but I want to veer back to Putin's address to the Russian people. I just want to draw everyone's attention to the cynicism of the messages he is communicating to his people, or people in inverted commas. So he is threatening Ukraine. So why does he continue threatening Ukraine in his address to the Russians? So if Ukraine continues conducting itself the way it has been, then they will challenge their statehood. So another quote, the current leadership in Kyiv should understand that if they continue conducting themselves like that, they will challenge the future of Ukrainian statehood, and if that happens, that will be their full responsibility. And he also says that there are some attempts to poke the Russian society into action, to undermine the Russian society. I think he's referring to multiple companies leaving the Russian market. And he also made one hint, if a conflict between Russia and NATO occurs, everyone will understand everything. And guess what the Russian troops are fighting for in this war? They're fighting for the future, according to Mr. Putin. And the sanctions imposed on Russia resemble the announcement of war, but it hasn't gotten there yet. Well, I'm pretty much sure that he's cuckoo, that he's a lunatic, but I think that we can hear some fragments of fear. Well, Mr. Putin says that he has faith in his army. Well, by the way, I want to express my gratitude to Mr. Putin for supplying the armed forces with the military vehicles and equipment, more than even what we received from our defense sector. Well, I want to repeat what the Kherson residents said in Kherson, that Zelensky is a peach, while Putin is you-know-what, or you-know-who. Well, our Lviv people are everywhere, and in Yanukovych's administration, we had some people from Lviv. Maybe they didn't really hold high ranks, but they were department heads or some other job titles. And they said that Mr. Yanukovych received special notes and reports. Mr. Yanukovych, you know what? Everyone loves you. You are the best. You know, you went to Lviv and there were some rallies and demonstrations there, but you are the best and all the people love you. So those were the reports Yanukovych received from his staff. And I think that it's the same with Putin, that his people keep telling him that everything is fine, and the Russians just have faith in whatever they hear. People wake up, peaceful residents in Kherson took to the streets and kicked you out, and you thought that the Kherson residents would welcome you with flowers. We have beautiful carnations, and so we will definitely welcome you with carnations, but just tell us what your exact coordinates are 10 to 15 minutes in advance, and the carnations will be brought there. In Mykolaiv, 4 intelligence guys were caught. One of them is an officer, and I'm sure that the security service of Ukraine will do a great job with them. But back to the oligarchs. While you are telling us about the oligarchs, we will ask our colleagues to prepare a video clip demonstrating that some Ukrainian men aged 18 to 60 continue attempting to leave Ukraine. So instead of bracing themselves for defending the country, they want to flee. But back to Akhmetov. For the first time ever, Mr. Akhmetov claimed that Russia is the aggressor and Putin is a war criminal. You can go to the Ekonomichna Pravda website. What did they do? They put together a list of standard questions and they sent them out to the oligarchs. And I guess that will be useful for Mr. Danilov. You can have a look at who responded, who didn't, and how quickly they did. Well, as for Mr. Hereha, no reply. Novinsky, no reply. And even Mr. Kolomoisky, who gave a lot of interviews 1 week before yet another invasion, is silent. Firtash, clear. Yaroslavsky, he talked a lot about his love and patriotism, but he fled the country. He's silent. That story is really neat. Well, maybe something that we need to do in Lviv. Maybe we need to send out such a questionnaire to some of our business people and counselors. Well, maybe we can just ask them to provide us with their geolocation because we are so concerned about their well-being. Well, we still have some Ukrainian men trying to leave the country. We have a video clip from the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. They utilize some disciplinary measures. Let's have a look. The Ukrainian anthem playing. Back to the studio, I would like to continue a similar topic. Mr. Kozitsky, the head of the Lviv military administration, informs that all militarily liable refugees have to go to the local draft centers. Some more details from Mr. Kozitsky. There's a coordination center that is located on Veteraniv 11th Street. It's in the vicinity of the Forum shopping mall, close to Baturinska Street, and all the recruiting centers are located there. So all men of draft age can go there, and this is a duty of all the men who came to Lviv region from other parts of Ukraine. On the 27th of February, he signed a decree obliging all the men aged 18 to 60 to get registered at this coordination center. So there's a temporary center where refugees, men refugees, can get registered as potential military service members. And if needed, they will be incorporated into the armed forces of Ukraine. If you cannot do that because of disability or because you are a father of many children, you can still help our country. You can join some of the volunteering initiatives, humanitarian command posts, and multiple other initiatives that we have in Ukraine. The participation and active engagement of each and every one of us are important because we all are warriors and fighters right now. So this is the latest information from Mr. Kozitsky. The State Border Guard Service of Ukraine informs that 14 offenders were detained in Zakarpattia. They tried to cross the border. The state border, despite the effective legislation, they were detained a little bit early. Yablonivka, Chyža, and Solotvino. In Mukachevo district, this is the Ukraine-Romania border, and 6 men from various corners of Ukraine, Kyiv, Kharkiv, Zhytomyr, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kropyvnytsky, and Zakarpattia were detained as well. I'm happy to see that people from Lviv are not there. And another piece of information on the same topic, some more details about those men that do not fall under requirements, so even if they are aged 18 to 60. So men aged 18 to 60 can cross the border if they have a relevant certificate that they cannot serve in the army, or men who have a relevant medical certificate, men who have 3 or more children aged under 18. But we had that discussion with some of our guests, and I thought that the number was 5 children. But what I see on the website of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine is 3 children. So men who have 3 or more children. And we have some other exemptions or exceptions. You can find more details on the website of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine or on their Facebook page. So if you are interested, visit these resources, and there you will find a comprehensive list of those men that do not fall under border crossing requirements. For technical reasons, 101, 112 numbers are not functioning, I guess because they are overloaded. 112 is also used as a source for rescue operations. So this is the recent news from SASU. Unfortunately, these lines are not operating right now. So if you need to call 101 or 112, you should use some substitute numbers that can be found on the website of the Lviv Military Administration. Some more info about Mr. Kiriyev. The Russians wrote that the security service of Ukraine received an order to kill all the agents from the Russian Federation, so they should leave the country. We're very supportive of that. Do not impede the security service of Ukraine. The Disinformation Center at the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine confirms that there's some splits in the Putin establishment. 6 oligarchs whose total capital amounts to 90 billion USD made public statements condemning the Russian aggression because their wealth reduced by 60 billion USD. And I'm talking about those companies that are publicly quoted, or these are those oligarchs that have their businesses abroad, but these people also have some apartments and they have enough savings in gold, for example. Leonid Mikhelson from Novatech Oleg Derilaska from Rusalu, Vahid Aleksarov, and some other ones. But Lokhtenkov, a famous banker, stated, it's unfathomable and it's unacceptable. States have to invest money in helping people, not in waging war. So we can see that that division is already there in the Putin establishment, but let's see how the situation unravels. If the information about the presence of Kadyr's forces in Ukraine, then we can see that this division is already there, in particular in the security forces. We have already mentioned that multiple Ukrainians globally continue appealing to their governments to close the sky over Ukraine. From time to time, we show a video clip appealing the Ukrainian diaspora to take to the streets in those countries where they reside. We want them to rally to call upon NATO to enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And Mr. Kozitsky, the head of the Lviv Regional Military Administration, made the same statement today. Let's have a look at it.
NATO, close the sky over Ukraine. NATO, закрий небо над Україною. Звертаюся до
NATO, close the sky over Ukraine. I'm addressing our European partners about no-fly zone. It's a statement from the President of Ukraine. People, join us. NATO, close the sky over Ukraine.
Українці всього світу.
Ukrainians all around the world. There are 65 million of you. Those who became Ukrainian due to the call of spirit and conscience. You are hundreds of millions. On March the 5th and 6th, take to the streets of all the cities globally and demand that the governments close the sky over your motherland, because they want to take your motherland away from you.
Згадували ми про ситуацію із виловлюванням на кордонах.
We talked extensively about men being detained on the borders, those men who want to flee from their military duty. There was a briefing from Mr. Zakhiydniy, the deputy head of the Lviv military administration, and Ms. Yavorska, another regional government official. So let's have a look at this briefing, and then we will be back in the studio with some more news. We would like to remind everyone that we are acting as per the law on national resistance, and as per this law, we need to have national resistance units and territorial defense units. We have Brigade 103 and Brigade 125. These brigades are almost fully equipped and ready. Brigade 103 comprises 7 battalions. Brigade 125 comprises 5 Lviv-based battalions. Apart from that, the residents of Lviv region, men aged 18-60 in the first place, have a chance to join the ranks of voluntary teams, and there's a clear-cut procedure for putting together these voluntary units, and they are being formed in the city of Lviv and in Lviv region. Before coming here, I had a meeting with the heads of district military administrations, because they spearhead this process as per the law on national resistance. And I received the latest information on the number of these voluntary units. I cannot really disclose this information for obvious reasons, but we have dozens of thousands of people who are already included into these voluntary units. What is the purpose of these voluntary units? They are comprised of people who have their own weapons, hunting or sports weapons, and those people who do not own weapons can join as well. These voluntary units will perform not really militarized functions, but some other ones, like patrolling or checkpoints, and a number of other functions that require human resources. forces. So this is the latest state of play. By the end of today, another decree will be issued, a decree signed by Mr. Kosicki, and this decree will streamline the process of forming territorial defense units in Lviv region. If necessary, these people will be armed with weapons. Why is it important? Because as per the law, it's crucial to adhere to the right procedure, because then these people will have the appropriate social benefits.
Sir, what the Ukrainian army needs in terms of support and ammunition, and what do you expect from the state of Israel?
Я детальніше перекладіть, будь ласка.
Зараз потребує в плані допомоги і що очікує від Ізраїлю?
Ну, для нас дуже важлива власними допомогами в мілітарній частині. Насамперед це засоби захисту, мова йде про якісні бронежилети
Some protective equipment, high quality bulletproof vests and high quality helmets. We would be very grateful to the government and people of Israel for their support, not only with the protective equipment, but some weapons as well. Small arms and some air defense systems, anti-tank equipment, for example. Because if we have these weapons on our hands, we will be able to handle Russian tanks. I have another question. We receive multiple questions from men who come here as refugees. They don't have any combat experience. They have a higher education. They want to participate in the defense of our country, but they are rejected. Why? What's the problem there, and what should they do? When our cities in the central part of Ukraine, in the east and in the south, were attacked, we received an influx of men from these regions, and a lot of these men are aged 18 to 60, and they should be enrolled in the army of Ukraine. Yesterday, we introduced and we put into operation a coordination center for refugees. Why for refugees? Because our district draft centers are overloaded, because their primary task right now is to mobilize those people who are ready to take arms and defend our country already tomorrow. So I want to address those people who come here as IDPs or refugees. If you are a man aged 18 to 60, please go to that coordination center located on Veteranів 11th Street. There they will receive high-quality legal support. It's been the second day of its operation, and about half the people who come to the center are referred to the relevant district administrations, and then they can join the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine. As for other people who cannot do that, they usually have some grounds for it. These are people with disabilities, and you can be exempt from military service if you are a father of 3 children and more.
Дивіться, тут теж є дуже цікаве питання. 2 дні тому назад у нас було
2 days ago,
по Львівській області,
a decree was issued in Lviv region, and the Lviv territorial community received the same order. Men aged 18 to 60 had to get registered at the local draft centers, and that created an influx of people. And there's a question about checkpoints. Can you provide us with more details about checkpoints? This is something that we discussed an hour ago during the meeting with the heads of district military administrations. The day before yesterday, a separate decree signed by Mr. Kosicki was issued, and this decree details all the checkpoints, official checkpoints that we will have in the city of Lviv and Lviv region. Some of the unauthorized checkpoints that were created since the outbreak of the war will be dismantled. I mean, we're very grateful to all the residents for their patriotic stance. But these unauthorized checkpoints can serve as observation posts. So there will be no impediment of vehicle movement. But some of these unauthorized checkpoints will be simplified, while others will be completely dismantled. There's another effective tool that we can use to handle those men who want to serve at checkpoints. They need to converse with the military commissars of their district. If you are a man and you go to a checkpoint, then my first question is, why didn't you go to the military draft center? So this is the question that I have to all such men. This is a very effective tool, and believe me that during the next 2 or 3 days we will be able to streamline all the checkpoints that we have, because we still have, unfortunately, some unauthorized checkpoints. I have a question about humanitarian aid. What is the most urgent need? Is there a need for volunteers or equipment? Thank you for this question. This is not really my area of responsibility. You can receive more info from my deputies. We have the 112 hotline, and those people who want to contribute to humanitarian aid can call that hotline and receive high-quality consultancy, because we have multiple issues there: border crossing, logistics, storage, etc. Another day of the war, and now another day that our people and armed forces have weathered through. The enemy is fascinated by the resolve of our people. Therefore, they continue shelling residential neighborhoods and killing civilians. It's a testament to the fact that their morale is dissipating. They do not receive any support from their leadership. And it's in favor of the Ukrainian army, our leadership, and the Ukrainian people. So we want to call on everyone to continue supporting the Ukrainian army. We have a Telegram chat bot, so please submit your requests there. We are already harvesting some initial fruits. In Chernihiv region, in the vicinity of Lukavivka village, a Russian tank was shot down thanks to the information that was posted in our Telegram chat bot. Some other news: the enemy continues attacking us in the information domain, like things along the lines of our president signing a surrender or capitulation agreement, or that the enemy is being welcomed by the Kherson residents with flowers and thank yous. It's not true. All these fakes do not reflect the reality. There's another fake circulating in the air, that the conversations of Ukrainians are wiretapped because of the war. These fakes are not truthful, so we will definitely dispel all these myths. A big request to all internet users: before you spread any information, double check it. Make sure that you use trusted sources. The Security Service of Ukraine, the Ministry of Defense, the Presidential Office, the Cabinet of Ministers, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, they have their official pages where you can find trusted information. Do not repost or share information that is not reliable or is suspicious. This is the only way for us to combat the enemy without harming ourselves. The Security Service of Ukraine also informs that some other fakes will be introduced. For example, this secret prison of the intelligence department, so that all the captives will be imprisoned there, and there are some war criminals there. The enemy also creates multiple fake pages of the Security Service of Ukraine and the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and they also spread the fake that people are ready to surrender Kyiv and things like that. The mayor of Kupiansk, who gave up his city, received a notice of suspicion from the Security Service of Ukraine. The enemy also transmits some untruthful information via the Russian television. They say that Kherson is occupied, that the Russian troops are there, but it does not reflect their reality. Through your messengers, through your friends and acquaintances, propagate reliable and verified information. There's a video clip on the website of the Security Service of Ukraine. So it's not true that Kherson is occupied, because our residents took to the streets with Ukrainian flags and they kicked out the enemy. Any additional questions about Lviv region? Unfortunately, the interpreter cannot hear the question. As of today, we have some suspects, and ostensibly they are saboteurs. We have relevant professionals working with them, and they will be polygraph tested. Well, the only thing I can disclose is that there's more than one. And they are residents from where? Unfortunately, I cannot disclose this information. I cannot really provide any further information at this point. If this information is corroborated and these citizens wanted to engage in some sabotage activities, then we will definitely publicize this information.
Чи не було такої інформації, що якісь є провокаційні речі, які звозяться на території саме Київщини?
Well, I cannot really find anything on the website of the Security Service of Ukraine. As for provocations, I cannot really tell you anything. I don't really possess any information in this regard. Lviv region serves as a humanitarian hub, so basically we are used as a springboard for distributing humanitarian aid all over Ukraine. And we have multiple humanitarian convoys transiting our region. If some suspicious items are detected, they will definitely transferred for the needs of the armed forces.
Зрештою, чи забезпечує Служба безпеки якісь ці листи, якусь супровід і так
Does the Security Service of Ukraine provide the necessary letters and documents for the humanitarian convoys? So all these things are coordinated with the military administrations. We are back in the studio of our channel, and we will continue discussing the current state of play in Ukraine and Lviv region in particular. You have just watched a briefing at the Lviv Regional Military Administration, and you were exposed to the latest information from the management of Lviv region and representatives of the Security Service of Ukraine. The world partners are galvanizing into action to support Ukraine. The U.S. government stated that they would allocate almost 3 billion USD, 2.7 billion to be more precise. So this is the money that will be used for humanitarian purposes in Ukraine and Poland. This is something that was mentioned by the State Secretary, Mr. Blinken. We also know that Mr. Blinken had a conversation with the Prime Minister of Poland, and they discussed the issues of Ukraine and all those refugees that are accommodated in Poland right now. They also discussed robust U.S.-Poland relations and their unwavering support for the Ukrainian people. This is something that we can see in Mr. Blinken's tweet. Another piece of information, the State Secretary of the U.S. had a conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Chinese People's Republic, and they also discussed the Ukraine-Russia war. We have a guest, Irina Mazur, the honorary consul of Ukraine in Philadelphia. Greetings to you, glory to Ukraine, glory to Helios, greetings. Thank you very much for this invitation. Thank you for having joined. We know that you are actively engaged in the diplomatic front, and we know that the Americans try to contribute to humanitarian aid. On the ground, you do a lot to support and coordinate these endeavors. So can you provide us with more details about how exactly Americans are supporting and what you are doing specifically to coordinate your efforts with the Ukrainian community there? First of all, I would like to point out that our NGOs in the U.S. collected some humanitarian aid, and the first planes are already either in Germany or Warsaw, and believe me, I have never seen such unity and solidarity within my community. I've never seen this many humanitarian aid packages that have already been forwarded to Ukraine. But there's another thing that we're interested in. Apart from humanitarian aid, we also are in perpetual communications with our Congress people and senators, and I would like to assure you that they all are well versed in the current situation in Ukraine, and they are looking for additional avenues to provide help and support outside of official channels. What does it mean? We have one NGO that received a permit to procure and provide bulletproof vests, because we know that this is the #1 need in Ukraine. We also are in good contact with multiple hospitals that are ready to donate. They are ready to supply containers with medications and medical devices. Some of these packages have already been sent to Ukraine. We all have a good understanding of the critical situation in Ukraine, particularly in the east. We do our utmost to ensure the establishment of humanitarian corridors, because people in the east of Ukraine need to receive water, basic food products, and some other essentials. We do understand that the humanitarian corridors announced by the Russian Federation are just part of their playbook, and it's like mockery. All our legislative officials are on top of things. We participated in one meeting, and one of the legislative representatives in the U.S. mentioned that they are exposed to brutal and honest information. I know that Ukraine is appealing to the world to close the sky over Ukraine, but it is not contingent on the U.S. Parliament or Congress. This issue also depends on the cooperation with European countries, and unfortunately, the situation is horrendous right now. We continue observing the current situation day in, day out, and believe me, we are utilizing and leveraging all the tools at our disposal to communicate the urgency and the importance of this issue. We have Mr. Dmytro Sharanovsky, an expert in international relations, this morning, and we discussed the issue of introducing a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And he mentioned that it's not really about the pressure from the government of Ukraine. There has to be more pressure from the population in the relevant countries. So there has to be ratcheted up pressure from the Ukrainian diaspora. What about the U.S.? Are the Americans and the Ukrainian diaspora in particular ready to take to the streets and call upon their governments to enforce a no-fly zone. In Washington, there are continuous rallies in front of the building of the White House. Tomorrow we will have yet another large-scale rally and demonstration, and as American voters, we will demand that the sky be closed over Ukraine. In each and every state, in each and every region, we have direct contacts with the congressmen and senators. They receive some official information, but at the same time, we are a source of information for them. They can find out through us what the current state of play is. So tomorrow we will stage yet another large-scale demonstration. As you can see, we are operating on multiple fronts, and I would like to provide you with assurances that we will do whatever we can, everything within our capacity to support with humanitarian aid, medical supplies, bulletproof vests and helmets, but all these things have to be supplied via authorized and legal avenues and channels. But the mechanism is already in place. We are with you. We stand squarely with you. We can feel the pain that the Ukrainian people are enduring. Irina, did I get it right that these humanitarian planes go to Poland or some other EU state members, and then they are transported by trucks to Ukraine? Are you in contact with the Ukrainian counterparts or the Polish counterparts? And what is the source of information for you about the most urgent needs? We receive official information via the Ukrainian embassy, and the Ukrainian embassy collects this information from the relevant line ministries in Ukraine. There are many people and voluntary organizations that have direct contacts with their partners in Ukraine, so they provide direct assistance to territorial defense units or hospitals. We have already sent one medical aid package, and this is something that we forwarded to hospitals and clinics in Lviv region. Another initiative envisages support to Ukrainian orphans. We want to help the Ukrainian state to protect children in the first place. It's a very complicated and complex mechanism, but this work is already in progress. The process has already been launched, and we are doing our utmost to contribute in all the ways possible. So let me reiterate that we have direct contacts with some of the voluntary organizations in Ukraine, with territorial defense units. And if we do not have such contacts, then we can always transfer money for the purchase of bulletproof vests and helmets. Well, I think that the primary need is bulletproof vests and helmets. We continue observing some of the sources, and you are right that the priorities include bulletproof vests and helmets. We have some acquaintances in Chernihiv, and we received the same request from them. They also have a dire need for medicine because they cannot really procure drugs anywhere there. But it's not even it's not only a matter of procurement, it's also a matter of delivering medical supplies there. Unfortunately, the Russians do not want to create humanitarian corridors. You touch upon the issue of children and the possibility of temporary shelter in the U.S. Canada has already stated that they will introduce a visa-free regime for Ukrainians. What about the U.S.? It's silent. Well, the U.S. government is silent so far, even though Biden's administration claimed that the U.S. would be ready to host Ukrainians, but unfortunately, we don't really have a legal mechanism for receiving refugees at this point. So we're still negotiating with the U.S. legislature legislature. There's a need to introduce a special regime, but that would also necessitate some changes in the American legislation. And I really hope that in the near future, this mechanism will be launched. We already have some legal tools for those Ukrainians who were already on the territory of the U.S. As of the 1st of March. So those citizens of Ukraine that were in the U.S. when the war broke out can continue their stay legally on the territory of the U.S. We do understand that many more people will come. There are multiple issues with the American visas right now. What about getting visas for those children who do not have passports? So these are the topics that we are heavily debating about with all the stakeholders. There are a lot of nuances there, but I'm 100% certain that the U.S. legislator will come up with some sort of mechanism to help Ukrainians make it to the U.S. I also want to point out that on Monday we will have a pre-conference of the governor of our state, and I will also participate. So the state of Pennsylvania will sever all its ties and relations with all Russian businesses, so there will be no Russian supplies. As you can see, even at state level, at local level, we do everything within our capacity to undermine and hobble the Russian economy. This work is being done on multiple levels, on multiple fronts. Once again, let me reiterate, we are united. We are also deprived of sleep. A lot of people work 24/7, government officials, volunteers, ordinary citizens, so we stand squarely with you. We will stand by you in the future as well. So that was Irina Mazur, the honorary consul of Ukraine in the state of Philadelphia. Once again, a reminder that you can support in multiple ways. We have the government of Ukraine, we have the president of Ukraine working on the diplomatic front, but there's an urgent need for bulletproof vests and helmets. So thank you for joining. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Back to the local news. Some more info from the Lviv city mayor on the situation at the railway station. We know that every day the Lviv railway station hosts 40 to 60,000 refugees, and they either stay in Lviv and Lviv region or they proceed further to the west. Some of these refugees are accommodated by their relatives, friends, and acquaintances, but a lot of refugees proceed to other countries. So more from Andriy Sadovy, the Lviv city mayor.
Львівський вокзал сьогодні є стратегічним об'єктом. Тільки вчора через вокзал пройшло більше 55 тисяч людей.
65,000 people have passed through our railway station. A vast majority stays in Lviv. Many people proceed to Poland by buses, by trains. Special attention is paid to moms with little children, and they can have some clothes, they may have some food. Volunteers work, also medical workers work there. It's hard for us because we have never had such a big amount of people there. But all people who come, they get some support. There have been some nuances about some categories of people. But now we have some sort of order now. But there is some movement, some dynamics, and we will try to help everyone we can. Putin is likely to go to jail. It's real. The prosecutor of Nuremberg process, so the procurer who's worked on the Nuremberg process, and he said that Putin can be condemned because he's made some sins against humanity. So the crimes committed by Russia, the Ukrainian prosecutor says, is a dishonor to our society. The guilty have to be
за злочини
under
проти людства та за
responsibility.
вбивства. За словами Ференца,
According to Ferenc, Putin can be put into jail as other prisoners of war and other people who cause genocide. It's very likely to happen, and the one thing, so Russians don't live in the moon, and Putin has to be put into jail. According to his works, to his words, he hopes that this danger will put away some actions of Putin. He doesn't have any doubts of his crimes. And it is proved that Russian military are focused on civilians, although Russians disprove that. But Benjamin Ferenc, who is aged 102, who worked on this process and he knows them very well, he can evaluate those things, and he can evaluate Putin's behavior. And he says that it's real that he has to be condemned to the worst imprisonment. We also have this information from security department. It is said that Kremlin's plans of new people's republics have been hindered in the West Ukraine. So they wanted to get Ivano-Frankivsk, Закарпатська, Львівська, Тернопільська and Чернівецька regions, and they want to cause some misunderstanding and stress in the West regions of Ukraine.
Причому Служба безпеки затримала організатора та ключових осіб мережі на Івано-Франківщині. За інформацією спецслужб в західних і центральних областях вони мали завербувати понад 5000 зрадників. Сепаратисти планували дискредитувати, позбавити підтримки суспільства силовиків, інспірувати недовіру до правоохоронних органів. Далі озброєні сепаратисти мали ліквідувати ключових керівників силових органів і представників влади. Після цього в регіонах планувалося спочатку захопити адміністративні будівлі і проголосити народні республіки.
Talk people into following them. And also they wanted to combine those regions of Ukraine and make one new republic that would be controlled by Kremlin.
Із закликом переходити на їхній бік. Крім того, знайдено звернення до іноземних держав
Apart from that, there have been some appeals to foreign countries.
дали покази на нього, і над організатором проводяться слідчі
So
дії.
the organizers of such deeds are being condemned for that.
Планам Кремля щодо утворення Федеративної Республіки України, до складу якої мали увійти Івано-Франківська, Закарпатська, Львівська,
So there had to be some federative republic of Ukraine with some western regions. Also, we have some information from Олексій Арестович, and we have some information about blog posts, and we need to talk once again about blog posts in Lviv region administration. So it has been mentioned that there would be some inspection of these blog posts, and it seems that this situation is being regulated, and all these unsanctioned blog posts are disappearing. Why is Arestovich talking about that? Talking to the citizens of West Ukraine. So these blog posts often hinder the movement of some special transport, the first aid, some humanitarian lorries. So let's watch what Arestovich says and return to our studio.
Так, шановні наші друзі з Західної України.
Dear friends from the west of Ukraine.
Надходять численні сигнали, що місцева
самооборона практично
паралізувала рух
that local territorial defense is blocking the movement of different transport. It's bad because we have some humanitarian aid that need to come to us. So this territorial defense says, I quote, it's being too eager. They want to find spies too eagerly. And sometimes they
які шукають друзів серед ворогів.
try to find those spies among
Дорогі друзі,
friends.
давайте наводити
But dear
порядок
friends, let's
на
put
дорогах.
everything in order
Це
in our
величезна
roads.
проблема.
It's a big problem
Ви
for us.
своїм рвінням
In
створили
your
вже
zeal,
проблеми на рівні
you have
держави.
made this
Президент
problem
змушений
on
цим
state
займатися.
level. And we need to talk about that.
Що повідомляють професіонали? Вони кажуть, що
Our
коли ви
professionals have
вважаєте машину
reported
підозрілою
that
або
when
пасажирів,
you
ви
think
навіть
that
не
a car is
зсилаєте її на
suspicious,
спеціальний
you
майданчик
don't need
огляду,
to
а
send
утримуєте
it
на
to
трасі,
some
доглядаєте, поки
special
інші
place.
машини
You
стоять.
may just observe it
Коли
on its
наші
place.
грузопотоки і пасажиропотоки рухаються
And
протягом
we have some lorries, we
4,5
have some
години,
cars
40
with
кілометрів,
passengers,
це вже державна проблема.
and if they move
Будь
too
ласка,
slowly, it's a state
впорядкуйтеся
problem.
там на місці. Я вже не кажу про
Please
випадки,
make
коли
order in
воєнні
your
починають
place.
жалітися іноземним
I'm not talking
кореспондентам,
about some other
що факти
foreign
дещо
journalists.
не дуже ввічливо поводжені із ними. Будь ласка,
I
шановні
found
колеги,
out some information that you may not be always very polite with them. So I appeal to you, make order in that, make order in the roads of Western Ukraine. So Lviv, Lutsk,
Чернівецька і інші області, які
Chernivetska and other regions.
які везе і вантажі, і
So
людей,
there are
які
some
потрібні тут для оборони
lorries
країни.
and some people. So we need all these supplies. We need to transport people. I don't want to deter your desire to defend Ukraine. We know that the Western regions do a lot for us, but we need to deal with that. About suspicious people, our state organs are also responsible for that, so you may address them and you may cooperate with them. So I do hope that people responsible in local areas will take responsibility of that. But we cannot admit disorder there. So we cannot admit too low speed on the roads. So I ask for professional help to inspect the transport and to filter other cars and lorries. Please realize everything of that, because it's becoming a big problem.
Не створювати несанкціонованих блокпостів.
Not to make not sanctioned blockposts. It's asked not only by Lviv Regional Authority, but also by Presidential Authority. You have seen it with your own eyes. So the people of the Western Ukraine are appealed there. And there are too many constructions like that in the Western Ukraine. Also, the police has its address to the people, but it's about our pets. So we help to evacuate not only people but also pets who have been lost during the shelling. So some pets are taken to other homes, some are taken to other people who are not indifferent. So if you found some abandoned pets, please don't be indifferent to them and try to find them a shelter. So the police says that the good will always return to you. By the by, we can also show a short video from Askania Nova, the National Reservation Complex. So now we are going to show this video. Also about new Bayraktars. There will be also new javelins. So Ukrainians like to name their children with unpopular names, but I guess that Bayraktar and javelin are special. These will be the most popular. Especially among the girls. When Stanislav was absent, we were trying to record another commentary. Sorry that we are a little bit confused there, but we have a commentary from a representative of Kherson region. So I called to Kherson, to my acquaintance, to a volunteer who described the information, who confirmed a lot of information, what happened
себе на екранах, яка є насправді зараз
after the
проблема,
strike.
що роблять росіяни,
So,
що постраждали від обстрілів.
we need to see what Russians do, the approximate amount of casualties. So we won't say who it is, we will just show a name because the person works in the middle of all these events. I'm sorry if the sound is not very qualitative, but you understand that there are always some hindrances for that. So our mobile connection works, but the terrorists want to deter it because it's the source of information for everyone. But now our utmost help is our news and how we report other people what's happening in Kherson region from the people who we know, not spreading the false information. Also, we'll have the Skype with the representative of Odessa region. The situation there is a bit calmer there, so we'll have Skype talk there. But now we have a guest in our studio, Ksenia Klim, our journalist. She is a presenter of the program The Story of Hero, and she is a mom of a person who defends our Ukraine, who wages war against Russia. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. So you are tired, but I can see that you are calmed down. We know that during these few days you have been to some important places. We won't talk about specific places, but because it's mystery, it's but we know that you have visited our military, people who are in the hottest places, so please tell us what you have seen there, how our soldiers are, what's the most important for them. So maybe I'll start with the most pleasant thing. We have been to places that are like hell. But we have been among the people who are ready to defend our country. And I am sure that they can do that. They will certainly guarantee our peace. Doesn't matter what happens on the international scale, they will do that. It's hard for me to talk about that because they are our children, our husbands, and they are the same as we are. They're also made from flesh and bone. But I know that their spirit is that strong that the whole army may envy their strong spirit. I was looking at them, and they haven't slept for these past 10 days. They haven't seen, I'm talking really about my son, who in that ditch, in that mire, and in that fire, they haven't seen neither bed, no clothes, they cannot wash themselves, not because there is no opportunity, but just because they don't have time. So they work, they travel, and they work. And this time, we were able to do what we had to do. We transported what we had to transport there. But I didn't get what I really wanted to do as a mom. I couldn't hug my son. So, more than 3 hours we stayed in some field. And we had some messages, but my son said, no, you just go away. We won't be able to meet. And there were some heated battles. So it's not that they were fired, but our soldiers were trying to attack the terrorists. It's an unbelievable spirit because I have seen everything that happened. Because these men and women, I guess that all the NATO army with all of their armor, with their clean clothes, so they are not worthy even one finger of one of our soldiers. It's something unbelievable. It was very pleasant for me. I was ready to kiss their hands.
підтримують наших хлопців. Я вже сьогодні писала, що це
to
не
see how
14-й
they
рік,
support
коли
our
наші
guys.
військові зайшли
It's not 2014. It's not when
зону
our
АТО, як це тоді
soldiers
називалося, і вони
entered
не
the
знали,
anti-terroristic
хто
operation
є
zone.
хто.
So they didn't know who was
Блокпости
who.
приносили
And
дітки,
on
банку з
блокposts,
медом, а в ній граната була, і
some
гинули
people
наші
would
хлопці. І отруювали їм
get some
воду,
food there, but
і все
it
було,
was
а тут
a
ні.
trap. It
Тут
was
все дихає, от, і б'ється
an armor,
воно
and they were
сонце
destroyed.
з-
But
з
now it's different.
цією боротьбою наших хлопців і дівчат.
So I was very inspired by the fight of our boys and
події в
girls.
Харкові, які відбувалися
So,
в останні дні, це доводить.
Thinking about Kharkiv and other battles, it proves that because the enemy hoped that people would greet them with flowers, would rejoice over them, but no. It was the biggest mistake of Putin. So Ukrainians are a completely different nation. We are not as we were in 2014. We are completely different. We are even more different than we were in 2019. And what the representative of military said on the video, we could fight beyond the military time, but when we feel the danger of the security of our country, even the biggest enemy cannot stop us. So it doesn't matter what's going on between us. If we need to defend our country, we will do that. So you said it's real hell. It looks really as we see on the photos. Yes, it is really so. In all these hot places, it's very scary for us that there is no this distinct line where the Ukrainian army is, when the Russian army is, and you know that some missiles may get you. And even if you go to Vinnytsia, seems to me there, like the road is damaged by rockets, by grads. So sorry, I lost my thought. So our acquaintances has said that their friends came from Kharkiv, and even their train were under attack when they were going to the western regions. So we are not even talking about humanitarian corridors. So the people, the terrorists, they are not only shelling the civilian object, they are also shelling the trains with the refugees. They just shoot them. They don't have anything in their heads or in their hearts. It seems to me it's made because of their powerlessness. They have this feeling. So it feels that this hot phase has to end because there is no one among them who can fight fiercely for Russia. But who knows? This sub-person who planned it all, who knows what's going on in his end. But I believe in truth, and I know that our soldiers are fighting for truth, and we know that we are all this army of truth. There is no way out. Everyone and everything supports them here, you know? I just can't imagine how can those Russians come further in Ukraine, who would support them, who would help them. So it's very clear. So coming near to the west of Ukraine, like Khmelnytsk region, Chernobyl region, you know, you just don't feel that. But there, in the central Ukraine, you feel that. You feel that unity. So why are we united when it's so hard, when it's so dangerous? Why? So for the last 2 days, we were talking a lot about the close sky and about that NATO is trying to put away that decision, although there are so many countries who support Ukraine who are NATO members. So are not guys demotivated by those news? No, these guys, they are not reading news. Really. It's not that they don't have some connection or means, but they just don't have time. Maybe some reservists who are just being delivered to those places. Maybe they can. So there is one more problem that is not solved to its end. So men who go there as civilians, maybe your acquaintances also, we ask people to bulletproof vests, we ask for helmets, so they can get everything of that there. And it doesn't mean that everyone who have been transported there as reservists stay there, but the part of them may just come back to live. But really, they don't have any time to read news. So we have mentioned today about armor of people who are going to the military area. So we are talking about different guys from that place or that place, that they need some bulletproof vests, some helmets, but the people from military authority, they assure that they will be supplied with everything. Yes, I have seen that with my own eyes. I have seen that my relatives, that they were supplied with everything. So what do you guys need most now? So when you send them, when you send your defender, so give them some underwear, give them some mat to sleep on, the sleeping bag, but maybe some special military armor. They don't need that. They will get that on their place, and the commander will decide who will do what job and what specifically they need. But they won't stay without any armor as in 2014. It won't be as in 2014. So I assure you that there is no soldier from reservists and also from other soldiers, there is no one who is hungry, there is no one who lacks something. So my heart was torn when I've seen some grain silos, and when I saw some tables, when I saw there some vareniks, some borscht, and local farmers, local women do that, they feed the army. And there is one more category of heroes, and we will also make many movies about them. The people who help our soldiers stand. So they also have some weapon, but they also help our soldiers in a different way. They all are united for the common aid. So talking about 2014, when it was there, when we've seen how people feed people, how they care for them, when the locals have some opportunity to have some meal with the soldiers. It's not the case now because they don't have time, but sometimes they may have that time. But there, like soldiers, they are very calm. No one is angry, no one is quarreling, and people there, people who feed the soldiers, they are very welcoming, and they are trying to care for the soldiers and do their best. And there are huge queues, but the women, they try to care for them, they try to really calm them down. And when I came from there, I was so much calmed down, even realizing the grave danger there. I was really calmed down because I know that they fight for the truth, that they are doing the righteous thing. And I believe that the victory will come soon. And you know that in recent days, I had just one thought: how will we meet them? I'm just torn apart by this thought. So now we are having the video. So our journalists have asked Lviv citizens, they asked them what they will do first when we win. So let's prepare the video. Ilya, tell us please when it's ready. Okay, it's ready. For you, it's immediately ready. Good. So let's watch the video what Lviv people will do after we have our victory. I will just scream glory to Ukraine, that I will just scream that our Ukraine will prosper. I'm dreaming of gathering all the family. You know, now simple things have become the most important for us. Just gather ourselves. I will just take a bath. I will have just hot bath. I will hug everyone. We will shout glory to Ukraine. And then we will call our friends and we will go to our best Kharkiv pub. I will meet the people who help our guys and celebrate. I will move to Lviv. I will go to a cafe and eat some dessert and drink some good coffee. I will go with my friends who are defending our Ukraine. I just want my child to see our home. I will meet my wife. I will just kiss her very, very hard. After Putin's death, we will open champagne. I will drink with coffee, not only coffee. I will go to Europe. My son will marry his girlfriend. We will be very glad. And then we'll plan our further life. We have 3 children. Don't you want the 4th child? Not yet. We want to go with our friends to Carpathians and celebrate it and visit all the family. I will hug my neighbors. I will cry and smile. I will come back home to Odessa. We will go to Crimea. I was 5 when I was there. I want to come back. I will propose to go to start relationships. You know, our emotions now are being felt more acute. We will make borscht all together, and we will sit at the table, and we will smile and hug one another and eat borscht. I will kiss all the soldiers, all our guys. Very simple things we've heard now. We've talked with Stanislav when we waited first. So we have champagne in case of Putin's death. Or we'll also have sirniks, Ukrainian cheesecakes, and then we'll go to Kharkiv because we haven't been to Kharkiv, but we will gather a company with our families, with our friends, and we will also go to Crimea. We have the desire to go to there. Svetoslav has mentioned that he has to pay some debts. Yeah, and I also have one query. Before you do that, thank, please. Express gratitude to those who will make this victory possible. You know, I remember the rotation of our Lviv team when they were coming back here. It was summer 2021, last year. So all these celebrations that one of our military units came, it was very modest. So I asked, why is it not military parade as in other cities? And they said, you know, the other times we had these parades, but then people didn't come to streets, they didn't celebrate with us. So don't forget about that. Go to the streets, celebrate that. And till the end of your life, remember about that and be grateful to everyone who made it possible that you can fall asleep into your own bed. So this fighting will definitely end with our victory. Don't be ashamed of admit it. Don't be ashamed of expressing your feelings. I guess it will be the most valuable thing for them. I know that they will have a lot of disillusionments because it's our human nature. But I do believe that this lesson will give us finally the ability to approach life in a different way, to re-evaluate many things, and to thank people who are worthy of that. All these simple guys, men and women, you wouldn't notice them on the street, but never forget about that. It's not about that, but also another crucial point about all those illegal blog posts. They are hindering the movement, so you went there and back, how much do they hinder?
Ми проїжджали,
So, frankly speaking,
нас пропускали.
we were admitted.
Особливо, кажу, до Хмельницької області.
So, especially till Khmelnytskyi region, we had no problems with that because they understood that we did a right thing, something that was very important for our soldiers. We had no problems. But if speaking about the Western Ukraine, we had that problems, those problems. I don't want to diminish the significance of everyone who took the responsibility to defend our cities, but please don't make it to the extreme. It's not only hinder, it doesn't only hinder, it also is an obstacle for the soldiers, for the volunteers, for the medical workers. They cannot just stand in the queue with other people who just want to go to the west of Ukraine, the refugees, because we may lose a lot of time. And all that time that we lose there, we may lose some lives when we lose that time. So because of that, even the President's office has addressed separately to the west of Ukraine. Yeah, it's something unbelievable, and I understand that everyone is ignited, we have a lot of emotions, but we need to approach that in a different way. It's very good that people in villages, in other places control that, but if you're speaking about the big cities, it's a catastrophe, it's very hard. So I also have another question, a technical question. I also had some news in Facebook that people are trying to find lorries to transport some things to the battle places. And really often people are scared to go to those battle places. Have you been guarded by someone? How does it happen? Except of some strategic things, I cannot tell about them. Everything else happens without any other convoy or defense. So my brother, he tries to transport some things by lorries there, and it's very hard for him, it's very hard for other people who do that on that road. And you just try to realize that some other people trying to deter them, they're trying to follow the queue line very closely, and it doesn't matter for them if they are transporting some vital things to the battle places.
Коли поверталися назад мешканці з тих районів, де зараз гарячо, не
So
просилися їх сюди забрати?
Were coming back from battle places to there, didn't they ask you to take them with you? So we were coming by bus. We had only 2 sitting places, but there were 5 of us. So there was a lorry, and in the sleeping place there were 2 children. Their parents are defending our country. They are from Mykolaiv region or some other, I cannot recall. But they asked us to take those kids there. So those kids are here without parents. Yeah, they are without parents. They are with very good people. They believe that they will come back very soon. Mom was crying a lot, not because she was afraid, but just imagine how much tragedy and pain that person has put into our country. We cannot forgive him. We cannot tolerate that. We cannot be understanding to that because it's a big tragedy. I just suggest putting a dot. So I want to say something. I felt really good when I was among those soldiers, people in that hall, and I was so glad to meet the heroes of our modern history. So we made an agreement that we will write down all their stories. And it was unbelievable because they recognized me and they remember me. And I realized that we'll have a lot of stories of our heroes. And I just pray to God eagerly. And I ask everyone eagerly that we will remember those stories. So I have another question. Let's talk about that program that we had before the new year. So aren't you tired? Aren't you burned out to write down those stories? And I can see that you are not. I believe that we will meet one another not only once. But now I want to finish that because when you go to your bed, when you wake up in the morning, I just urge you to remember the story of those children who have been transported there, that their kids, the parents of those kids, they stayed in the better places. They stayed there so that we will be able to wake up in the morning, to go to our beds. So we need our victory only if it's only for those two children who want to return to their parents, the parents who sacrifice everything. They understand that they may not come back. They understand that they may not see their children. But now we have the ability to go to bed normally, to do everything that we can, to cook, to transport some armor, to give our money, so that all these militaries, all these soldiers would feel that we are also ready to give our lives, so that they will be able there in the better places to defend us. Thank you, Ksenia, a lot. Thank you for giving us hope from those battle places. We do not cease to thank you that you have such a son, and that you are ready to sacrifice your own son for our own victory. Although that we do believe that your son will be one of the heroes of our story. And all those stories that we have been talking about the last half an hour. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes. So we are thanking the soldiers who are trying to attack and who are destroying the Russian soldiers, Russian army. So they claim that Ukraine doesn't want to negotiate, and they also think that they will renew their attacks on Kyiv. And on Chernihiv region there were some military units that they were destroyed by Ukrainian soldiers, and their mechanism, their tanks are being destroyed. Also, the soldiers don't have the fuel, they don't have food, they are demoralized, and they are ready to surrender into the captivity. And Zhytomyr territory defense have seized the Russian lorry with some missiles. So, quote, the quote that the Russian Federation has become the biggest supplier of Ukrainian army, of our technique. Also, we have some information that Russian terrorists have fled from Energodar, and the Ukrainian authority have come there. We are talking about the city council. We don't know why, but they close themselves in the city council. But they are there no more. And and terrorists are continuing to deter the nuclear plant in Energodar. Also, Lviv city administration is publicizing the reserve numbers for our services in some extra situation. Please use these numbers if the common numbers, the usual numbers don't work. Take a picture, make a screen, just have them with you. Also, a big request for police line. If the case doesn't relate to the police, please don't call them, and don't say that every person who speaks Russian is a suspicious person. But thank you very much for your vigilance and that you are ready to help our
Lviv region is actively forms the volunteer as on date. So we have around 10,000 people, and in Lviv region we have 25 blog posts. The others were established without a certain permit. So please do not make the barricades by yourself. It's very important to have it controlled with the government, with the authorities. And each man from 18 to 60 still staying here should get enrolled to the territorial defense. So a part of citizens formation. So there are territorial defense brigades, and the formation of this brigades is almost came up to the end, so they are almost complete. So please go and get enrolled to the volunteer formations, but please make sure you do it according to the rule, because it should be coordinated with the respective governmental unit. Also, on the territory of Lviv city, in regions, if you want to form your volunteer unit, you have to have your passport and identification code, so you will be enlisted, your data will be uploaded to the database. And taking into account that we have a war right now, we are at war, so probably the enrollment process could take a bit longer than it usually does. So if you don't know what to do, or you don't remember the algorithm of what do you do if you have the heart attack or something else, also you can find here the list of necessary medical appliances and the medicine and what you should do in case of heart attack, for example. So in the chat box you can find the list, and it makes you can share this information with people in other regions of Ukraine, the people who stay in the regions, with the actions right now, war actions right now. So we were talking about the plane flying from Russia to US, and we were hoping that there is that's the plane with Russian governmental representatives, and they were flying to have some negotiations in US, but no, it's a diplomatic plane, let's say. So it's the plane flying to pick up the Russian diplomats, supposed to pick up 12 diplomats and bring them back to Russia, because United States applied sanctions against these people, and since they were to be picked up, Russians sent this Il-96 to pick up the diplomats and their families. So if they fly above Ukraine, maybe they could stop somewhere nearby Lutsk, so our guys can point them well. And the representative of International Affairs Ministry, Maria Zakharova, she did confirm that these are the diplomats which were announced as non-gratas in US, and this Il-96 has to avoid flying above the European countries, because the air space is closed above the European countries for the Russian planes. And about the sanctions, so we have the information, so they have to fly over territory of Georgia and Turkey and Israel. For example, Ksenia Sobchak also had left the country, whose mother yesterday said that there are lots of losses, and her father, Ksenia Sobchak's father, was was the chief of Putin, and taking into account the statement of Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation on that they are following with so the Russians take more time to shell our civilians, our social infrastructure, so they kind of aiming to destroy as many civilians as they can, because to have, on their opinion, some advantages on the during the peaceful negotiations, to use it as a level to push on the negotiations. Also, so about the situation in Crimea, and the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, the enemy keeps on turning the peninsula into the military base. So according to the information, the 4th of March 2022, from 2 p.m. till 3 p.m., there were detected the lorries and the trucks with the letter Z, 4 trucks and 2 armed vehicles. Also 23, also the train with transporting the militaries, and 2 lorries having the new signs with the letter X, and the military vessels there were detected in the Black Sea nearby Hurzuf, and they were detected near the cities of Jankoy and Armyansk. And we also have information that the hospitals next to the Crimean-Ukrainian border are full with injured people. And on 24th of February, the occupants installed the equipment, the air defense equipment, on the yards of the civilians. So it's just the part of the crimes that occupational government is doing in Crimea. As on to the 9th day of war, we think that Russia is supposed to have around 40,000 injured, because is the numbers we have here according to the strategical logics of carrying out the military actions. Using the occasion, we want to express our gratitude to our partners and to our personal friends in US and Germany. They share our videos with the petition to cover the sky above Ukraine, and our neighbors like Poland and Czech Republic and Hungary. Lots of people abroad, our neighbors, receiving our refugees. They're ready to give them homes, to give them food, to provide them with something which is necessary for the families at the moment. We know that we are being watched. Also, we are grateful to our simultaneous interpreters that they're still translating for the 10th day long. And also, we want to express our gratitude to our Belgian friends who provided 10 vans, medical vans, and we were to our Belgian friends. We have video from them, and we have the opportunity to show these ambulances. We want to thank to our Polish friends and the Belgian company LIC and its director, Zbigniew. 2 enemy pilots were captured, and the aircraft
прикордонники разом з збройними силами.
The pilots got catapulted, and our territory defense, they are looking for them, and we're standing strong. We are not giving up, and we see that Russians are unable to keep on carrying out the war actions. Lots of them just leave and trying to escape. Also, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba, and we don't see him a lot lately on air. I think he's just physically unable to do that because of the negotiations, because he's constantly on negotiations. So, what did he say? His statement is, does Russian gas smell with Ukrainian blood? And I ask all our partners to stop, all the countries of the world, to break the relationship with Russia. I wanted to quote one person, but to keeping on the topic of the aircrafts, Yanina Sokolova also, she posted that one captain who used to work recently on the Ukrainian post service, he shot from the artillery equipment of 1975, which is even old Soviet Union times equipment, so he was able to shoot the Russian aircraft.
47 років, а він так вміло вбив
47 years old, and he managed to down this aircraft, which was worth $60 million.
Вибачаю вам всі загублені посилки, всі загублені
My appeal is to Ukrainian Postal Service. I forgive you all the parcels that you ever lost that were in my name, because now we have this hero who used to be an employee of Ukrainian Postal Service. So even if you lose other letters of mine that were addressed to me or addressed by me, so it doesn't matter anymore. I forgive and forget as long as you keep downing Russian airplanes. We are going to have a guest on Skype, but I'd like to quote Otar Dovzhenko. Very often he provides comments to different Ukrainian channels, and you know that there is also online news marathon by Kyiv media companies. It's a fantastic initiative, so it's great collaboration of different media channels. So back to Otar Dovzhenko. He said that I visited many channels, and before the 24th of February, only presidents could be in all TV channels simultaneously. But as our president wisely mentioned that we are all presidents, so that's absolutely true. So now I feel I'm a president too. So that's a great initiative that we are able to invite guests to our studio. Now we are going to have a short break, and after the break we will welcome a guest to our studio.
Українці всього світу. Вас 65 мільйонів. Ті, хто в останні дні став українцем за покликом духу і совісті. Вас сотні мільйонів. 5 та 6 березня виходьте на площі всіх міст світу і вимагайте в уряді закрити небо над вашою батьківщиною. Бо у вас хочуть відібрати батьківщину.
Повертаємося до студії телеканалу «Перший Західний».
We are back in our studio, so we have our Skype.
Із нашим наступним гостем. Це Дмитро. Дмитро з Одеси. Привіт, Дмитро, чи добре нас чути?
Welcome, Dmytro from Odessa.
Добрий вечір, ми з України. Привіт всім.
Ні, ми по-іншому перевіряємо. Слава Україні.
Glory to Ukraine, glory to its heroes. Say паляниця.
Молодець. Дмитре, яка ситуація зараз на
Okay,
Одещині?
can you fill us in on situation in Odessa?
Ми стежимо тут на Львівщині за всім, що відбувається
We
по всій
follow
Україні. Які
tightly on what's
справи
happening
зараз у
in
вас?
Lviv and in Odessa, but could you fill us in from first hand? If you allow me, I will switch to Russian. I've been speaking Russian all my life. It's my mother tongue. And I keep speaking Russian, but I do feel that I'm Ukrainian.
Ми могли чути впродовж останніх 10 днів і ті слова, за яких ще нас не закрили і не відібрали ліцензію.
You know that we have even been using curse words and pejorative words, and we haven't been close. So Russian language is okay. Odessa is under pressure and is in a quite tense situation. Lots of people are leaving the city, but lots of people are staying as well. We have barricades all over our city, checkpoints. The 28th Brigade is operational, some armed forces are at their places, and they are taking care of our city to make sure it's safe and peaceful. So they do it in Odessa and Odessa region likewise. Day in, day out, we see that many more people join the territorial defense, civil defense units, and they join the protest. A lot of people changed their viewpoint these days. Majority of people changed their beliefs, their perspectives, and now they became the people who are trying to defy this illogical, absolutely illogical, disgusting, repellent war that is going on. You say that a lot of people left the country. Our journalists, they do surveys and polls, and they meet a lot of people from Odessa. Do you have any statistics, at least preliminary, of how many people left Odessa? It's hard to answer because you have to understand people of Odessa. Odessa people have never been very proactive, so they never go out. So they stay at home. A lot of people remained in the city. A lot of people joined volunteering movement. They are all working for the common good because we want the dark clouds disperse above our heads. There are lots of people who leave Odessa and they head for Lviv, Uzhhorod and other western cities. There are people who are trying to live abroad, so Moldova to Romania, so they are trying to take a ferry and go to Romania. So it's understandable because we ended up in a situation we could have never even thought of. Dmitry, we were talking in our studio and during the coffee breaks that Russian occupiers did not think that they would meet such defiance and resilience in Kherson, for example, and other regions of southern Ukraine. So, do you believe that all people understand that Putin is an enemy and Russia is not our brother?
происходящего на сегодняшний день, и если кто-то в Европе этого не понимает,
what's happening
то
right
на
now.
сегодняшний день люди абсолютно
And I
четко
believe that
понимают,
these
что
days everybody has
то,
a
что
clear
происходит у
understanding
нас в
that what's
стране
happening in
на
our
сегодняшний
country,
день,
what's
это
happening
безумие.
today is a sheer
Одесситов тут
madness.
огромное количество.
And there are lots of people
Среди
from
моих
Odessa
знакомых
who are
есть те люди,
absolutely
которые
aware that
меняют
Putin
кардинально
is an
свою
enemy.
точку
There were
зрения
people,
и
even in my circle of
видят
friends, who
всё, что
changed their
происходит в
mind,
нашей
who
стране
changed their
объективно и понимают,
attitude,
что
because they see what's happening,
будущего у
they see
такого
it
нет
objectively.
и быть не может.
And
Загроза
Russia is not our
реальна,
friend.
також ми розуміємо,
Russia is not our
Одесі,
brother.
як часто у вас спрацьовує, скажімо, повітряна тривога?
How many times
І
did
як
you have
люди на
air
це
raid
реагують?
sirens, for
Бо,
example,
знаєш,
in the
на-
past 24
коли ми
hours?
говоримо
How
про західну
often
частину України, то, скажімо,
do you
сьогодні
hear
у нас
sirens?
тут
Because, for
тривоги ще не
example,
було,
in Western
і
Ukraine,
будемо
we haven't had
сподіватися, що не
sirens
буде. І ми
today,
так інколи вважаємо,
touch the
що
wood.
західний регіон,
And
він такий
some people
приспаний
believe that
тривогою, як в Одесі
we
із
are
цим.
maybe too complacent here because it's peaceful and quiet here. I wish you to remain peaceful and quiet because other regions are in a dire situation. The tears of our children, of our women, who couldn't have thought in the worst nightmare of their life that they would wake up from air raid sirens at 3 a.m., 1 a.m., 5 a.m., you name it. I could have never thought in my entire life that our children would be the children of war. I could have never thought in the worst dreams possible that people born in the south of Ukraine, the region that is known for its humor, for its positive attitude, a lot of talented people were born in Odessa. Maybe not all talents are known to the world, but this is a very rich city. It's a very rich country. It's a very rich region. I could have never thought in my entire life that these children would keep asking questions. When is it going to be over and who stands behind it? Speaking of air raid sirens, yes, we hear it regularly. Anti-aircraft defense works efficiently. They take care of our safety and security of thousands of people who remained in our city, who decided conscientiously to stay and not to leave. Because we had a lot of people who moved to Odessa starting from 2014. I don't have any statistics, unfortunately, of how many people left, how many people stayed, but my ballpark calculation estimate would be that tens of thousands of people stayed, and they keep asking a question: what happened in the world that we are now going through such dire, dark times? Because our city is shelled, our region is shelled, and this madness is dire. But Odessa people are being very brave, people of different age, from young to old, and they all are heroes to me. Thank you, Dmitry. Thank you, Odessa people. Thank you for your readiness. Here we are also doing what we can. We are standing up for our freedom, for our beliefs, for our values, for our motherland. And I just hope that our children won't have to suffer and cry, and that the end of the war is around the corner.
Продовжуємо говорити про актуальну інформацію на Львівщині. Ситуація в пунктах пропуску.
Speaking of Lviv region, I have updated information about the checkpoints with international borders. So you can see how many pedestrians and how many vehicles are waiting at the international border crossing points.
Дальніх від нас регіонів України прибувають, вони йдуть дуже довго.
People keep arriving in Lviv. Some trains take much longer than usual to arrive in Lviv. We have more vehicles on the motorways leading to west of Ukraine. But if you, for example, look at the border crossing point with Moldova, there are only 2 vehicles and a few pedestrians. Romania, for example, border crossing point, there are 310 pedestrians. Oh, I apologize, 310 vehicles and 70 pedestrians. Hungarian border crossing point, no pedestrians and around 155 vehicles. A bit more vehicles are waiting at the Polish border crossing point, which is understandable. We have updated information from the headquarters of the armed forces of Ukraine. So this is the 10th day of defiant and brazen battles of Ukrainian people against Russian Federation. Today, Bila Tserkva town was shelled by the Russian Federation, Irpin was shelled, and railway tracks were damaged, and the train that was used to evacuate peaceful people also was damaged. Russian private military companies show bigger presence in our land recently. In Rostov, Wagner organization deployed its representative office. They keep spreading fake information how successful their military operation in Ukraine is. Ukrainian soldiers shelled 15th Brigade of the Russian Federation Armed Forces. Ukrainian armed forces also killed the commander of the 15th company, Mr. Zizevsky. 2 airplanes were downed and 3 pilots were taken captive. A few helicopters and a few UAVs were also downed. So, and this is the picture from Irpin. People are trying to hide under the bridge, which is partially destroyed. So this is what Russia does in Ukraine, and they keep calling it special operation and the fight for the future. There is no future for Russia, but Ukraine definitely has future because we stay strong, we fight for the future, we fight for our future, the future of our motherland, and not the future of Putin as Russians do. People keep asking the question about financial figures, how much it's going to cost us to rebuild our country, and International Monetary Fund issued press release, and they say that Ukrainian has suffered a lot of damage, and of course the reconstruction is going to cost a lot of money. Ports, airports have been damaged, closed, motorways, bridges have been damaged. It's difficult to make any calculation at this very stage, but it's clear that the cost for reconstruction and renovation is going to be huge. Ukraine already requested $1.5 billion from International Monetary Fund for reconstruction and renovation purposes. The situation in Ukraine remains unstable, the prospects are unclear, and they keep emphasizing that the sanctions imposed on Russian companies. The country aggressor will definitely be used to cover the losses and damage that Ukrainian economy suffered. The fiscal policy will be supported, and of course support will be provided to the most vulnerable sectors of economics. The Prime Minister of Israel had a secret meeting with Putin, negotiation with Putin, and he offered his service as a mediator in negotiation process. News has it that everybody is trying to get involved in negotiation process with Putin. And Putin is probably preparing his arguments, and he wants to strengthen his negotiation position. He's trying to keep putting pressure against Ukraine, and most likely he is counting on the scenario of 2014, but we are absolutely positive that President Zelensky is not going to make any concessions. So there are clear arguments that Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk should be deoccupied, and Ukraine should renew its borders the way it was before 2014. So its territorial integrity is beyond any discussion. Russia is a weak country. Its army is much weaker than they position themselves, and they don't have the might they have been talking about for decades. It's 7:22, so another 2 hours, a mere 2.5 hours left before the curfew. And remember that we have curfew between 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. Of course, it varies from region to region, from city to city, and sometimes even it varies between city and region. And it's important that you leave early, you leave on time, because there are checkpoints, and there are 25 checkpoints altogether in Lviv and Lviv region. All other checkpoints, so they are illegal, they have been organized spontaneously, but too much initiative, too much of a good thing is a bad thing, because it hinders, it doesn't help, it hinders humanitarian aid convoys. Also remember that you have to get ready to prepare your documents for inspection. Remember that there are 2 lanes. The left lane is for special vehicles like firefighters, ambulance, police cars. You only take the right lane. Remember that you have to turn off your headlights, turn on the light in the salon. Even if you were using a video registrator, you have to turn it off, so any video shooting is illegal. Answer your questions clearly. Be prepared that police might do the inspection of your car, the trunk of your car. Slowly cross, pass the checkpoint, and only later you can drive at a normal speed. You're trying to say that I have to turn off the headlights, but what about the nighttime? I remember that I have been crossing the checkpoints with my headlights on, because I didn't know, and nobody told me. I misunderstood the regulations. They said that the headlights have to be off at all times. It doesn't matter whether it's daytime or nighttime. Yeah, you are right. So the headlights should be off, but the lights inside your car should be on. Even if you scratch your bumper, It doesn't matter.
Добре, прийшли на 10-й день війни інструктаж з перетину блокпостів, але зараз скористаюся можливістю для нашим ефіром, для наших колег. Ми вже повідомляли вам про те, що ТРК «Перший Західний»
already mentioned that our TV studio provides you with the latest news 24/7. Our colleagues are involved in volunteering activities, and we shared some video footage. Our journalists were involved in fundraising to buy Outlanders for our armed forces. We know the needs of our army, and our colleague Anatoly Kozak, who represents Radio 1 studio, he has direct contacts with soldiers in the front line, and he posted a message that they are looking for UAV, so that's the announcement on his Facebook page. If you have such unmanned vehicle, so we would be happy if you could donate, or if you could donate money. So if you are interested, open Anatoly Kozak's page, and you can start making donations. So that's Anatoly Kozak. Make sure it's the right Anatoly Kozak, because there might be a few people with the same name. So if you have this UAV or you are ready to donate, you're welcome to do so. We were talking about the debts that I have. It's not personal debts. It's debts to our army, to our servicemen. Once I lost in a bet, and I actually had to buy tiramisu desserts to some of the servicemen. Yeah, it's a joke, but I will be honest with you. Yeah, so the guy who I have to buy tiramisu desserts, so he is a serviceman, and he had a contract, and his contract was about to expire in March, but he decided to prolong his contract because this is where he believes, and this is where he feels he is most needed. But once the war is over, we are going to sit down and have a good cup of coffee with tiramisu dessert, or maybe a burger, or something else. So it doesn't really matter. So these are my debts that we were talking about. Should you want tiramisu or a burger, you can bet with my colleague journalist. My favorite dessert is cheesecake with caramel. We also have video footage with the representative of Kherson region, but it's being prepared at the moment. But let's listen to the latest news.
Наша команда тримає інформаційний фронт 24/7. І з вами ми сильні, а тепер іще сильніші. Перший Західний розширює мовлення. Тепер наш канал і у цифрі на Т2 для мешканців Львова та довколишніх громад. Якісна картинка і перевірена інформація. Дякуємо, що дивитесь і довіряєте.
Пришли вас освободить. Сьогодні ти знову написала, що тобі страшно. І я знову попрошу. Ні, сьогодні я накажу відставити боятись. Погладь за мене бармале і спокійно лягай спати. До речі, як там Маруся в школі? Скажи тату берегти серце і обійняти маму. І взагалі, давайте усміхатися. Вашій силі краса. Допомагайте один одному і виручайте. Цілуйте любимих. Святкуйте свою свободу. Ви за нашими спинами. Ось такі теж надійні, не ховаєтеся, прикриваєте нас із тилу. Зробіть так, щоб ми пишалися вами. І ми повернемось. Повернемось і будемо жити.
Повертаємося у прямий ефір. ТРК «Перший Західний». У нас рендериться відео щодо Херсона.
We are back in our studio. Unfortunately, we still have to wait for this video about Kherson region. As soon as we have it, so we are going to share it with you. News about Belarus. So they are going to be isolated from the rest of the civilized world because Belarus is banned from International Union of Railway Workers. I'm not sure whether it's much of a punishment for them, but at least so the process has started and they are going to be cut off from the rest of the civilized world. There is information which I'm not sure it's verified, but those people who did not pay utility bills timely, so they are not going to be fined. So they are still obliged to pay, but if they have some untimely payments, so usually they are fined, but not during the martial law times. It's important that people keep having access to important information. I want to assure you guys that I paid all my bills, including mortgage. I forgot to pay utility bills. No, we pay utility bills after the 10th of each consecutive month.
З цим мене тяжко, але не важливо. Комунальні послуги, це справді важливо, тому що ми розуміємо, що
it's really great news that
кожен із нас,
even if you have some issues, so you won't be fined, but it's important to pay utility bills timely. We are still waiting for this video that was announced from Kherson, but before it appears in our studio, so we have information about Moscow protests. Okay, we've got two video footage for you, one from Kherson and the other from Moscow. Our information war against Russian Federation gives the first fruit.
Не просто побачити, а побачити в російському навіть телевізорі. Отже, з чого потрібно почати?
Okay, let's begin.
Що сьогодні в Москві на мітингу вийшло приблизно 10 тисяч.
Around 10,000 people joined the rally against war. Russian propaganda has it that there were 1,000 people, but indeed there were 10,000 people.
В цілому льот тронувся.
So the ship has sailed. Russia is beginning to open their eyes and they're beginning to understand that they don't need this war. Russian Federation keeps spreading fake news. They keep saying that ordinary Russian people keep receiving phone calls that they have to withdraw their money from bank accounts because they were turned off from SWIFT. Their journalists keep saying that SWIFT is not such an important tool, so keep your money in the bank. But we see a totally different picture. Russian people are trying to buy clothes from different chain stores. They are trying to buy furniture from IKEA because they understand that this is the last chance to buy imported goods. Russian people begin to understand that this is all because of war. They understand that Putin decided to invade our country and now they are suffering consequences. This information campaign also opens the eyes of people of Belarus. They are also beginning to understand that they don't need this war.
Lots of
male, Belarusian male, they are trying to flee the country because they understand that they could be conscripted, and therefore they are trying to escape before they are conscripted. They understand that their army is totally demoralized. Belarusian dictator probably understands that he shouldn't invade our country, and I think that these are small victories that are going to lead to demoralization of Russian Federation and Belarus, and most importantly, their people. Speaking of Ukraine, we all saw what was happening in Kherson. Ukrainian peaceful people from Kherson region, they were chased by the armored military vehicle. Similar things were happening in Russia, in Novopskovsk. Unfortunately, there they started shooting at the peaceful people. One person was wounded. But I'm absolutely positive that such peaceful rallies are going to continue. Tomorrow, New Kakhovka announced the protest. Nova Kakhovka is Ukraine. This is our Ukrainian patriotic war, and we are going to win this war.
Повертаємося у прямий ефір. Херсон теж Україна.
Kherson is Ukraine. I called an acquaintance in Kherson. I'm not going to mention his name and or show his picture because he's still there, and we know that Russian army is there, and Russians keep tracking our information resources.
України і українського в Україні, я не скажу ні українська мова краще, ніж у мене.
This person that I'm talking about, he is more Ukrainian than I am. He speaks better Ukrainian than I do. He did a lot for Ukrainian culture and for development of our country. We are going to watch a video that he made, and he is going to share some of the latest news. People say that there is a problem with food, with water, with essentials. It's absolutely true. On the 28th of February, Russian army, they besieged our city, and they started controlling our checkpoints, and unfortunately, no food, no medication is delivered to the city right now, since 28th of February. People who were trying to leave the city, they were shot, and I got the information that some activists from Kherson were killed when they were driving their car. Volunteers are trying to help, and they are targeted, constantly targeting by Russian army. There are trucks full of food and medication and humanitarian aid waiting to enter Kherson, but unfortunately the mayor of the city says that it's not safe. Russians do not want to create green humanitarian corridors so that the humanitarian aid is delivered safely in the city. I'm not sure if you saw this video footage yesterday. Russia is trying to bring some food and hand it out to Ukrainian people. So these are the trucks that brought some food, but people did not want to take their food. So they were standing, waiting, no one wanted their food, and that's why they decided to leave the central square of Kherson. There is still a dire need in food grocery stores, supermarkets sold out everything they had, and pharmacies sold out all the stocks. There are a few grocery stores that didn't open since end of February because they were afraid of looting. So some still have food and essentials in stock. Hopefully, if they open, people would be able to buy at least some basic things. Other stores give away food and essentials free of charge. But I believe that the situation is critical because we are running out of medication, running out of food and essentials. Personally, I buy medication in pharmacies, and I help people who don't have such an opportunity. There are huge lines of people waiting in the pharmacies, and some pharmacies are afraid to open. We have certain categories of medication that we are missing terribly, like insulin, for example. There are a few charity organizations that are helping people suffering from diabetes mellitus. Unfortunately, insulin is in huge deficit. There are a few small towns, Chornobaivka, Zelemyanka, so they are in humanitarian disaster. If people want to leave the city, is that possible? No, no. You can't leave or enter the city. We are besieged, so you cannot leave to the left bank of the Dnieper River. So there are a few exits from the city, but all are being controlled by the Russian army. One of my friends, who is an activist from Kherson, he was trying to take his family out. Their vehicle was, they opened the fire, and their vehicle was badly damaged, and they barely survived. We see that people are protesting, people are trying to kick the Russians out of their city. Do you think that there is a chance that the Russians will leave the central part of Kherson? You know that I didn't take part in this exact protest, in this rally, because I was busy buying medication in a few pharmacies. But look at how many people stood up, and there were Russian army next to the city administration, city council, and they opened fire against peaceful people. They just wanted to spread panic and scare people. But people kept shouting at them, and they were chanting Ukrainian slogans.
В Херсоні це на понизі Дніпра якраз таке теж доволі відоме таке місце сили, скажімо так. От дійшли туди відповідно теж фотографувалися.
People were taking pictures. They were chanting different slogans. Russian military left the central part of the city. Upon leaving the city, we found out that they represent Russian National Guard. So this is a kind of police SWAT unit. This SWAT unit is used in Russia in order to dismiss protests, and they are like a riot police. From what I understand, that after the tank left the central part of the city, it was relatively peaceful in the city. There is also information that there are no Ukrainian channels present in your city right now. Is that correct? So only Russian channels. That is absolutely correct. Starting from the 3rd of March, from the day they took over our city and they took over control of our media, and they started broadcasting only Russian media. I have friends and acquaintances, and they said that, yes, so they can now watch Vesti, Russia 1 channel. Unfortunately, there are no Ukrainian channels like Suspilne and others. It disappeared since the 3rd of March, since the day the city was taken over by Russian army. If you have internet, if you have access to digital news, you can still get access to Ukrainian TV channels in YouTube, for example. But if you don't have internet, if you just rely on ordinary TV, analog TV, so in that case, you don't have access to Ukrainian news. Another bad news is that there is one big shopping mall in Kherson. It was badly damaged. It was shelled by artillery. It was part of it was on fire, and the firefighters were trying to put out the fire, but unfortunately they didn't stop the fire. The Russians didn't stop the fire, and it was dangerous to put out the fire. The headquarters of security service of Ukraine in Kherson region was also badly damaged. You probably saw that a residential building was badly damaged by a missile in Tavrisky district. A few villages nearby were also badly damaged by artillery shelling. A few buildings in Parakopska and Kuluk Street were also damaged. Kherson City Council reported 180 victims. 180 people suffered. So these are all civilians who suffered from direct fire and shelling. Another bad news is that we don't have stable mobile connection and internet. Kyivstar and Vodafone are still working, but unfortunately their towers were attacked. LifeCell, which was working effectively, was also, their tower was damaged. My advice to people of Kherson, be careful as far as the fake news is concerned. Please share the information about the updated news in the city. The situation in general is very, very difficult. It's difficult in all aspects. Food supply, medication, internet connection, telephone connection, etc.
вдасться відповідно
But I just hope
уникнути гуманітарної
that
катастрофи.
we will be able to avoid humanitarian disaster.
Повертаємося до студії
We
телеканалу
are
«Перший
back
західний»
in
і радіо
our
«Перше».
studio.
Щойно прослухали з вами коментар
We just
від
heard
колеги
our
нашого,
colleague
не нашого
from
Станіслава, який
Kherson.
записав з ним інтерв'ю. Колега
It's Stanislav's friend from Kherson. He is a journalist.
Стежити за
We
ситуацією,
will
яка
keep
там
following
розгортається. Але
the
знаєте, от ми
situation
поки
in
сиділи за
Kherson,
кадром,
the way
спілкувалися,
it's
натрапили на
unfolding.
коментар Сергія Танченця, лідера гурту «Без обмежень», який
As
пише,
we were watching this
лідер
video
гурту, який
and
збирає
listening to this
мільйонні,
journalist,
тисячні
I
аудиторії,
read the
скажімо,
comment of
величезні зали,
one
пише, що я їду там кудись, можу
singer.
забрати людей, підвести,
He
можу
said that I can
евакуювати, так
offer
би мовити, і
my
перевезти
help.
кудись.
I can
І
help
коли дивимося на такі
evacuate
пости,
people
розуміємо,
using
що
my
цю
own
націю
car.
точно не здолати,
I
не
know that
перемогти.
even when
З
celebrities
цією
are
нацією
offering help,
жоден ворог не
so
зможе
that
собі
means
дати раду.
that
Правда,
this
зараз
nation
нам треба
will
буде
never
дати
be
раду із
conquered,
тією
will never
ситуацією,
be
яку ми маємо,
defeated.
особливо на Львівщині, особливо з тими людьми, які щодня прибувають тисячами в нашу
We
область.
have a lot of
На
people
залізничному
arriving
вокзалі,
in
ми вже з вами
Lviv and
сьогодні
Lviv
згадували,
region,
через кожного
in
дня через
Lviv
вокзал
railway
проходить близько
station,
30-40
around
тисяч людей. І
30,000
найважливіша
people
інформація
arrive
щодо цього, ми
daily.
сьогодні обговорювали її з представником військової адміністрації. Якщо
We
вам
had
вночі
a
треба когось
meeting
забрати
with
з
the
вокзалу,
representative of
з ваших
military
рідних,
civilian
знайомих,
administration,
колег,
and he
когось
said
навіть
that
із
if
не
your
зовсім
friends,
знайомих людей,
your
яким
colleagues,
ви
your
пообіцяли
relatives
своє помешкання,
arrive
щоб кудись
at
їх
night
доставити,
time
то для
at
того, аби
railway
вам в
station,
комендантську годину на вокзал потрапити,
you
потрібна
might be
перепустка.
allowed to
Подбайте
go
заздалегідь
out,
за
but
цю
you need
перепустку,
special
зверніться до
permission.
військової адміністрації,
In order to
там,
get the special
є
permission,
спеціальний
you need
штаб,
to apply
є
to
комендант, який
military
відповідає
civilian
за ці
administration.
справи,
There is
звертайтеся,
a person in
і
charge
це питання
of
буде вирішено,
special
власне, там,
permits.
бо без перепустки
Otherwise,
вас
you
ніхто
cannot
по місту
go
пускати
out
не буде, і не
during the
будете мати
curfew
можливість
hours,
приїхати
and
до
you won't
вокзалу і
be
забрати
able
тих
to
людей, яким
pick
ви
up your
пообіцяли
friends,
зробити.
relatives,
Наступна інформація
acquaintances
повідомляю
who you
кожного дня,
promised to
як
host
робот,
in
я
your
зауважив, що
home.
коли приходжу додому, спілкуюсь з дружиною, то я в такому самому
When I
стилі
go
розбиваю всі
home
речі і
and
говорю, як
when
далі.
I talk to my wife, I keep this didactic tone, and I keep reminding myself and her and everybody I know that we have a curfew in Lviv, and you cannot leave your home after 10 p.m. If you need to leave your home after 10 p.m., you have to have a special permit for that. Another reminder is that curfew might vary from region to region, from city to city. Also remember the rules of crossing the checkpoint. Remember that you have to take the right lane. If you don't have special permit, if you have special permit, you can take the left lane. Remember that you have to turn off the headlights because they
особливо якщо пересувається в областях
hinder the work of servicemen and civil territorial units who work at the checkpoints. So they need to see how many people are in your car. Video shooting is not allowed at checkpoints. Please do not argue with law enforcement or military. Be ready that your car might be inspected after they give you the permission to cross the checkpoint. You keep driving slowly, and after a few meters or a few dozens meters, you can start accelerating. David Arachamia had an interaction with Mr. Kravets. He said that there's going to be the third round of negotiation next week, and somebody said that, Mr. Arachamia, you should pick a new baseball cap. If you want a baseball cap from Aviacija Галичини company, you are welcome. We have quite interesting range of baseball caps. This
сьогодні
is day
10-та доба
10
нашого протистояння із найбільшим
our
ворогом планети.
resistance
Завтра
with the
неділя,
biggest
якби хто
enemy on
забув.
this planet.
На
Tomorrow
телеканалі
is
«Перший західний» з
Sunday.
11 до
Tomorrow
12 вас
we
чекатиме літургія
will
із
start
храму
broadcasting
Воскресіння
at
Господнього.
11.
А
There
ми вже
will
з
be
вами
Holy
побачимося
Mass
із 13:00 у цій студії.
between 11 and 12, but we start broadcasting at 1 p.m.
Також наші ведучі із Радіо Перше працюватимуть
Remember
для
that
вас
you can also listen to Radio
в
1.
нетрадиційний спосіб, бо
Our
в
radio
неділю в нас зазвичай
presenters
інша сітка, але працюємо 24/7,
start
продовжуємо працювати для вас.
early morning and they work
Поки
24/7.
наші редактори за кадром нам обіцяли, Іра обіцяла наша приготувати тірамісу після перемоги, то ми радимо їй не чекати. Завтра неділя, можемо і в неділю собі приділити для
Remember
цього
that tomorrow is Sunday. You
особливий
can
час.
spend some time
Прощаємося
with
з вами
your
до завтра.
family,
На
with
цей
your
момент
nearest
маємо
and dearest,
відео про
and
те, як
we are
живе
going to
Львів.
say
Саме ним
goodbye
хочемо сьогодні
soon
закінчити
to
наш
you
ефір.
because
Як працюють
our
школи, садки,
broadcast
лікарні
is over.
і
But we would like to show you one
харчування,
more
кав'ярні, про
video
які ми так
how
мріємо,
the
всі ці
city
випадки
lives its
в
daily
переможних
life,
умовах і в
about
умовах
schools,
миру, а
hospitals,
не війни.
cafeterias, restaurants, etc.
Переповнені людьми, які тягнуть валізи вулиці, порожні класи шкіл та садки. Вже 10-й день Львів живе в режимі воєнного стану. У школах тривають двотижневі канікули. Нині навчальні заклади поселяють вимушено переселених мешканців міст, які обстрілює ворог. Припинили освітній процес також у львівських дитсадках. По-іншому в особливий період працюють міські медзаклади. По консультацію до сімейного лікаря медики радять звертатися телефоном. Відвідати лікарський кабінет можна за попереднім записом. У поліклінічних пунктах вакцинації приймають у звичному режимі, однак із незвичним переліком щеплень.
You can still get vaccinated.
Відмінені. Однак, якщо
Unfortunately, elective surgeries and elective procedures
погіршення стану, то звичайно, що такі пацієнти
postponed at the moment if there is emergency, if there is urgent case, such patients are provided necessary help and the necessary assistance.
Призупинили роботу або ж перепрофілювались і заклади харчування. Чи не на кожних дверях у центрі міста оголошення «Нагодуємо, прихистимо». Львів більше не пахне кавою. Чимало кав'ярень зачинені. Більшість ресторанів не приймає відвідувачів. Мовляв, кухарі готують їжу для біженців та тероборонівців.
Work, they say that their kitchen, their chefs, their cooks are working to prepare meals for our servicemen, volunteers and territorial defense units. We prepare more than 100 meals daily. For example, yesterday we cooked bohrach soup. The day before yesterday we cooked chanahi soup.
Магазини, банки клієнтів приймають, однак приходьте заздалегідь, бо час роботи скорочений. В місті оголошена комендантська година. Скоротили і кількість громадського транспорту. Відтак, на маршруті, до прикладу, 6А замість 8-9 транспортних засобів сьогодні курсує 4. Решта автобусів задіяна в перевезенні дітей. Тетяна Діяк, Юрій Кісь, програма «Очі».
І всі України.
А в Херсоні місцеві мешканці напередодні окупаційні війська натомість розповсюджували по своєму телебаченню фейковий телевізійний сюжет, на якому начебто окупантів мирно зустрічають херсонці.
Ой, трое деток дай! Есть, нету. Вот стоим, вот приходим, 6 часов занимаем тут.